This is pretty sad. But a new study shows that only 4% of millennials hold a biblical worldview. What does that mean for future generations? 4% of millennials hold a biblical worldview, according to a recent study. The American Culture and Faith Institute, or ACFI, published results of a survey earlier this month. The survey measured the core beliefs of millennials compared to older generations. The study shows that millennials hold more liberal views of things like socialism and same-sex marriage than older generations. But there's another big difference. Millennials are much less likely to become conservative in the future. While it's normal for younger generations to hold liberal views, they drift to the right over time. Not so for millennials. Millennials are so far to the left of center that even a typical amount of repositioning will leave them very liberal, says George Barna. It's unlikely that even 10% will ever hold a biblical worldview, he says. Barna is the executive director of the ACFI and is cited in the study. Millennials versus older generations, the major differences. Here are some of the bullet points, but before we get to that, this is a major problem. Several generations called the millennials, the collective of the millennials, don't hold a biblical worldview. In fact, only 4%. Those numbers are staggering because it proves that their subversion tactics have worked. Only 59% of millennials identify as Christian. This compares to 72% of adults from older generations. Only 33% of millennials, 1 in 3, are born-again Christians. Only 12% of millennials identify as conservative. 26% are liberal. For adults older than 30, conservatives outnumber liberals 2 to 1. Almost half, 44% of millennials prefer, almost half, 44% of millennials prefer socialism over capitalism. As many as 15% of millennials identify as LGBT. Only 6% of those over 30 identify as LGBT. The only question more millennials than older adults held a biblical worldview on: whether all people are good. Millennials are less likely to believe that this than adults over 30. This lines up with the biblical concept of original sin and man's fallen nature. Worldview development Christians get busy. What exactly is a worldview anyway? A comprehensive conception of, or apprehension of the world, especially from a specific standpoint, according to Merriam-Webster. Dictionary.com defines the original German word, a comprehensive conception or image of the universe and of humanity's relation to it. So how do people develop their worldviews? Barna says that parents are the most powerful influencers of worldview, and most often a person's worldview develops between 18 months and 13 years old. There will of course be exceptions to this rule, but in general, the worldview a person possesses at age 13 is the worldview they will die with. What does this mean for future Americans? Millennials entering their prime childbearing years, Barna notes. They will likely pass their current worldview to their children. Christians must take action if they want future generations to embrace a biblical worldview, because we're nearing 1%. We're at 4%. Only 4% of millennials hold a biblical worldview. That is shocking. We've got to keep working. We've got to keep waking people up. These are the end times for a reason. It just becomes more prevalent as each day passes the time period we are living in. It's time to wake up. It's time to wake the church. It's time to wake people up, folks. That's all I got for you. God bless and carry on.
We are under attack. The mainstream media is getting desperate. The old media is dying. And they're not going anywhere without a fight. We must weather the storm. We have something they don't. You. We need your help. Become a member of the Christian Truther for $1.50 per month, using the discount code in the description to support us in this fight and get access to all of our unlimited content. God bless you and thank you.